Another piece of the leftist long game is that, or at least from my perspective, is that this level of income inequality is disastrous. And history has shown it over and over and over again.
Right.
We are at a level of income inequality not seen since the Gilded Age, when we had no income tax, right?
Yeah. Hi, this is Frank Schaeffer. You are listening to Frank Schaeffer in Conversation, and today I'm with Laura Dawn, who is a friend of mine, and I'm going to be talking to her about her political involvement over the years as one of the people who was instrumental in getting MoveOn.org going back in the day, kind of crossing paths with me, someone instrumental in getting the religious right going back in the day. If we had met back then, we would have been enemies. Now we are joined at the hip, as it were, because we're fighting on the same side on a lot of issues. Laura is a filmmaker, a writer, a composer, an activist, a political operative. She introduced me to Moby, the musician, a little while ago who I interviewed, because Laura sang for him a lot in the past and was part of his musical entourage. So Laura, welcome to In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer, live on Facebook, to be repeated as a podcast in a little while. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you virtually.
Yeah, nice to see you virtually as well. So Laura, talk a little bit about your journey from being in the rock and roll business. Give us some dates and some parameters. One of my favorite albums is Little Deaths, which you recorded. And then, of course, there's all the tracks you did with Moby, and then your political activism, your life in that venue, and then Art Not War, your company that you make all sorts of things for the ACLU, all sorts of people. You've done so many things, and I know you, so I don't even know where to start. How do you unpack all this stuff?
Yeah, that's a lot. I was just thinking about every 10 years, I basically switched gears. So what's the short version? Sorry, my husband's just walking out. I was born in Pleasantville, Iowa. Could start there. A really small town of 1,000 people. I grew up. Our house originally had a dirt floor and an outhouse. Luckily, my dad built the rest of it within a couple of years, and grew up there. Was the first person in my family to go and graduate from college, working class family. And then decided I was going to move to New York City, even though I didn't know anyone east of Iowa, and just showed up in New York City, went to the Y, stayed at the Y, thought I was getting an apartment, and it turns out it was a squat. It was a scam. Ended up sleeping on like a board on top of my suitcases in the squat for a month until I could get into a real apartment, and toughed it out in New York City for 10 years, just not knowing anyone. And during those 10 years, met so many people that have been formative and influential in my life since then. But my first love was music. And so I was the lead singer of a band that was popular in the East Village. It was an all-girl punk band called Fluffer, which I did not know what that meant at the time when I joined the band.
Yeah.
We toured and we were on MTV for 2 seconds, and we made a bunch of indie albums. And this is back in the days where if you went on a tour, there wasn't any internet. I mean, you were doing all of that yourself. It was a bunch of girls in their 20s, young women in their 20s with the van. We loaded all of our equipment ourselves. We charted the tour ourselves. We booked the tour ourselves. We were always opening up there was always men. We were always the only women backstage. I feel like I could write a whole book just about that experience. But it sort of was an amazing toughening up, and it toughened me up for the things that I did later. Being an organizer, a political organizer, is actually a really serious DIY job, and being in a DIY band actually was really good training for that, it turns out.
Yeah.
So met Moby during that time, started doing demo work with him, and had just, in a bizarre coincidence, got interested. I got interested in politics. I'd always been interested in politics, but the main thing that got me interested in politics, strangely enough, considering what a lefty I am, was John McCain. I really became interested in his Straight Talk Express campaign in 2000. I don't know if you remember that.
Sure.
I really liked it. I liked him. I liked what he had to say. I liked the entire vibe, for lack of a better word, of that campaign. And I became aware of George W. Bush when they push-pulled him in that campaign and really sort of set about to destroy somebody within their own party. And there was just something about that kind of Shakespearean takedown that really caught my attention. And I started paying a lot of attention from that point forward. And when Bush became president, which honestly, to my mind at that time, was like a silent coup. I mean, I sort of couldn't believe, to me, that was sort of like the first strike, the first death blow of our democracy was that election. I decided that I just wanted to get involved in some way. And I had no idea how. I was from Pleasantville, Iowa. I didn't know anyone in politics. My only credential in life to that point was being in a punk band, you know, being a professional singer. I was a great bartender and waitress as well. I had done, you know, temp work at the World Trade Center. I mean, I didn't really have any credentials to be in politics, or so I thought. So I got interested in Howard Dean when he came along, and probably for the same reasons. There were similar reasons that I liked him with John McCain. And I decided to volunteer when he came to New York City. And it was a really formative experience, because when I went to volunteer, I realized that like my first thought about the Howard Dean campaign experience that I had as a volunteer in New York City was how poorly run it was. I kind of couldn't believe what a mess it was. And there were all these people that were supposed to be in charge, but they didn't know how to run an event. And I have a degree in theater. So I actually knew how to run an event. I mean, and I'd still been involved in theater projects in the 90s. And so I don't know what it was that made me do this, but I just stood up and took charge. I just took it over. And when the guy that was supposed to be in charge came back and tried to get all the volunteers to do what he wanted to do, they were like, no, she's got this. We're doing what she said. She's got this. It's all organized now. We got the press check-in. We got the this check-in. We're good. You can go back to doing whatever you're doing. And I left that experience feeling like, wow, you know, I kind of knew what I was doing. I sort of made that happen. And it was a really empowering feeling. And then in just the weird way that my life works, I had a record deal at that point, and I had to go to Japan for a promotional tour. And the guy who sublet my apartment was Zach Exley, who, if you're in progressive circles, you know that name. He was, I think, the 5th or 6th person hired at Move On. He's been really instrumental in the Bernie campaign and the Green New Deal, one of the architects of the Green New Deal. And he's just been a really successful left-wing operative. But at that time, he just was looking for a place to sublet. He sublet my place. And we got to talking. And as I left to go to Japan, he stuck the Wall Street Journal in my hand and said, this is so you can read about your subletter. And there was a whole article about him on the front page.
Yeah.
And it was a funny story. He had started this website, gwbush.com, which was filled with, you know, satirical bumper stickers about Bush. And Bush sued him. He was so upset. And it became a sort of important case defining whether political satire was legal on the internet, which it was. And, you know, Zach won. But as they left the courthouse, G.W. Bush famously said, there ought to be limits to freedom, which Zach then turned into a bumper sticker and made a bunch of money off of. But so we started up a friendship, and he told me about moveon.org. And same kind of thing happened. I heard about what they were doing. I thought it was really exciting. And then I heard that they were crowdsourcing a political ad. And I just, my brain just lit up. Like the idea that people could aggregate their money and have an equal voice by running an ad, I had never heard of anything like that before. And then I saw the ad and I thought, that ad could be better.
Yeah.
And so I just decided that I wanted to work for Move On. And there would be literally no reason that they would hire me, but I just decided that I wanted them to hire me, and I had all these ideas. So I remember I was talking with Moby, and I had tried. So Zach had given me Eli Pariser, who was the head of Move On's, he was the head of Move On at that point. He's like this, at that point, 21-year-old genius young man running Move On. And I emailed him over and over and over again, and he didn't answer me, and why would he? And so finally I just decided, I have to do something to get his attention. So I offered him to meet me for lunch with Moby. And he responded to that.
Yeah.
So as I've said before, I just, pimp out my friends whenever I can, to get where I'm going. So we had lunch with Moby and Eli, and by the end of that lunch, we had come up with what became this groundbreaking organizing moment called Bush in 30 Seconds. It was the first user-generated political ad contest, and I remember Eli saying, "Well, who's going to run this?" And I said, "Well, I will." He was like, you will? And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it for whatever you're paying me, And so
yeah,
they hired me to run it with some other people that, but it generally, I think it quickly became sort of it became a full-time round-the-clock job for me. I was being paid some sort of low hourly wage, and it just took over my life in a hurry. And by the time it was done, it was one of the biggest cultural moments of that year. It was
and at that time, Move On was it. I mean, this is pre everything else.
Yeah. And so
with people for the American Way, and then Move On. I forget which of those two came first. I guess Norman Lear's People was first, or was Move On first? I lost track.
I mean, Move On started. It technically started in 1998.
Yeah.
I think it really didn't sort of hit its major stride. I mean, the membership just got exponentially larger.
Yeah, so People was first with Lear, but I want to go backtrack a little bit before you go on, and that is
I just like tell the story all day.
A lot of the Moby songs that you sang on are some of my favorites, but my memory is no good in terms of names of tracks. But there's a couple that he's redone on his Reprise album that you sang on in the original, but just for folks so they can look up something and go to their music source, give us a couple of the tracks where you really belted out a la Janis Joplin, but even better, as in my opinion, than Janis Joplin, because I love those tracks and I just don't want to get the names wrong.
Well, most of the stuff that I personally love the most is on the Little Death album. Just Google the Little Death NYC. You can find it. It's on iTunes.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite song. And that's those are songs that we all wrote together.
Yeah. And I play that all the time. I've got the, I've got the CD from you and I play that. But what are a couple of the Moby tracks that you're on that people can go to on which albums?
Moby tracks the ones that I like the best are on the album Hotel. There's a song that I sing called Very.
Yeah, Hotel that's a great song on the Hotel album. Yeah.
And Temptation, I think is a nice one. And then Moby and I do a bunch of duets on there. Where You End is a really nice one. And Dream About Me is a really nice one. So I think that whole album is.
And then you were, what years were you touring before you got into the Move On thing? Just give me, you've gone through this, but just give me some dates here. So you're touring with Moby, you're singing in his band, you're all over the world with him in arenas and all this business. When is that going on?
That happened in the midst of Move On. So I started with Move On in October of 2003, and I came on the staff in 2004. And then during that year that I was working, and it was basically around the clock trying to defeat Bush, I doing the demos for Hotel with Moby. And then at some point in there, I actually sang on the album. And then Moby's album came out in 2005. And I actually was not going to go on tour with him. I so loved working for Move On, and they had offered me a permanent position.
Yeah.
Sort of the job of a lifetime, dream job of a lifetime. But I went to I decided that I'll just do the promo, appearances with Moby,
Yeah.
and go back to Move On. So I did the promo appearances, and we were in the UK and around Europe. And I ran into a friend of mine, and he said, "Are you crazy? You can go back to work for Move On. They'll take you back. This is a once in a lifetime world tour. You have to go do this.
Yeah.
If you don't do this." And so I came back and I spoke with Eli about it, and they were kind enough to.
They were okay with it.
Yeah, they were supportive.
Just to interject, we've got links to your music on in the chat section of this interview for people who want to look it up. But so let me get back to one point. You and I did not cross paths back then, but I was campaigning for McCain in that same election when evangelicals were putting pamphlets on windscreens in church parking lots claiming that he had sired an illegitimate Black child. And I was asked by the campaign, by the McCain campaign, because he had written an introduction to one of my books about my son in the Marine Corps. And I was asked by McCain to sort of intercede on his behalf. He, because of the family name Francis Schaeffer being a big evangelical leader, the McCain campaign knew that I liked John. And so they kind of, under the misapprehension that I was still popular in the evangelical world, would I please go? So I did. I got on a couple radio stations and I did my best for him. And Ralph Reed, who then became this organizer that helped Trump get elected, was supposed to debate me on one of them. But then when he heard it was me, he didn't agree to debate because he got into politics because of me and my dad. So that was kind of my last hurrah as a person, speaking on evangelical radio stations. I think that trying to help McCain was the last time I was ever on any of the big ones. And then after that, of course, I was all done anyway, having left the evangelical community. So we sort of crossed paths there. More recently, you have been kind of tracking with me because as part of your film work, and we don't want to get into this too deeply, but just to mention it, do you want to go there at all and mention a project that you're working on that has sort of brings us together, or do we want to leave it alone?
No, let's talk about it. So I worked for Move On for 10 years.
Yeah.
Then I started my own company, excuse me, Art Not War. If you go to artnotwar.com, that's my company. Yeah. Basically, so we could do what I had done for Move On for a wide host of issues.
And some of those people have included the ACLU, other people. Just mention a few people. I was in one spot you made during the last campaign.
We've worked for almost everyone you can think of in this issue advocacy space. Move On, the ACLU, Narrow Pro-Choice America, Moms Rising, Ultraviolet. There's a whole list of them on our website.
Yeah. Okay, so then you've been doing all that.
We did that.
Yeah.
Been doing that for 10 years. And along the way, I went from being a creative director and a producer and a writer to just deciding to step behind the camera and direct myself.
Yeah.
Probably over the last 18 years, I've directed, I don't know, I stopped counting somewhere around 500. I've done so many online content pieces. I think there's something like 1.5 billion views of my direct work at this point.
Yeah.
So it's, sort of an early adopter of video on the internet, and produced a couple of feature documentaries along the way too, directed a short. And after the last election, the last 4 years have been, brutal. And really questioning everything about what we've done and what we built and the kind of tribalism and allegiance that I have even had, something that I thought I was completely immune to.
Yeah.
Kind of coming to terms with the fact that I don't think I have been as immune as I've thought.
Yeah.
And really trying to do a lot of deep listening since 2016, figuring out where we've gone wrong. And, I have many, many theories. I've gone very, very nerdily far into this, the idea of micro-targeting and persuasion and how we're just not lifting up communities to talk within each other, and everything that we've done wrong on the left. We're very didactic, and we love to tell people how to think. And we're not very good at listening. But but these are also people that do share my values. So
Yeah.
what to do, how to break through.
Because just to interject there, you're not like me, you try to remain a free thinker and not be too pigeonholed. There are times when you're pretty discontented with aspects of the left, even though you are a lefty and you're on the progressive liberal side. There's parts of this movement that you find are pretty lacking right now, or making real mistakes.
Yes, we've made many, many mistakes. I mean, look, all you have to do is look at where we're at. The world is on the verge of complete ecological collapse.
Yeah.
We've known about that for a really long time. The first year that I entered this space, and I've been doing this for 18 years, I didn't understand why we were talking about climate change on someone else's terms. I didn't understand why we weren't telling the really brutal truth. And every year that has just intensified for me. One of the things I'm proudest of the work that we've done at Art Not War is we've really pushed the sort of the idea of linguistic frameworks, and have really worked hard to change that to climate emergency.
Yeah.
We've gotten some great traction. We were the first ones in this space to talk to people where they're at. People in this country are terrified about what's happening. Talk to most 18, 19-year-olds, and they'll tell you that they're not even sure that they should finish college. Why should they bother when the entire world could be falling apart by the time they're 35? I mean, that's the timeline that we're looking at here if we don't act, and they don't see. I mean, if you're paying attention, no one's doing anything.
Yeah.
The idea that we would hit the Paris Accord, we're not on track to hit that. No one's on track to hit that. We're on track for 2 to 3 degrees of warming. And you're looking at game over for humanity, which people just have a hard time wrapping their heads around.
Yeah.
Because we're bad at long-term threats. A building falls in Florida and dominate the media landscape for weeks, because that is a visceral thing that our brains can comprehend very, very quickly. But something close to 800 people died in the heat wave. And for some reason, there was hardly any coverage of that. That is more nebulous, elusive, harder to feel that immediate sense. It's just not the way that our brains work. We're bad at long-term threats. We evolved to respond quickly to short-term threats. So this is something that I've just been working on a really long time, but there's just no denying that if the progressive left had been in any way successful, instead of engaging in this constant back and forth binary game that we're all playing with each other, we wouldn't be here.
Examples of the binary game.
I mean, it's happening every day. A critical race theory. There's an example of just a made up binary game that we're all just going to engage in. Somebody on the far right thought this is a great way to keep this thing going back and forth and back and forth. Doesn't help anybody, doesn't solve anything.
Keep the rage machine going.
The rage machine going. And then they create the narrative frame.
They being like Fox News and the right.
Fox News, the right. I would call it, in my mind, I sort of call it the right-wing digital ecosystem at this point, because it's a media conglomerate, but its power really is digital. And there's a sort of narrative they create. The one bit of respect I will offer the right wing, not a bit of respect, it's a lot of respect. They understand how they have done the work to understand how people think and how to message to people and how to meet people on their own terms. They've done that work. They seem to care more about influencing people and taking that seriously as a science than we do. We have a lot of really smart people on our side that are just convinced that if people just know the smart things that they know, they're going to come around to their way of thinking. It doesn't work like that. The right wing doesn't do that. And so they're very adept at putting the money and time, and you know a little bit about this because you helped it happen.
Seeing as you're talking to a right-wing propagandist master.
You're one of the best right-wing propagandists I've ever seen, so you know probably what I'm talking about. Thank you for coming over to our side. You were pretty lethal on the other side. But they're very good at creating these narratives, these narrative frames, and we just respond to them. That's all we do. We don't put any time and money into creating the narrative, why would people want to live in our world, right?
Yeah.
Our world is no fun. You don't get to eat hamburgers anymore, and you have to watch what you say, and that's why would anybody want to live in our world?
Yeah, and if you're writing a book and you get the terminology wrong from last week, your editor emails you frantically saying that's not what you're supposed to say anymore. I don't mean what you're saying, but the term. So whether it's Latina or Latinx, or whether it's capitalized W for white now because it's capitalized for Black, and honestly, as an old dyslexic, boomer, it's hard to keep track of. But if that's where the whole discussion goes all the time while the world's burning down, we've kind of missed the point, I think.
Right. So what I remember, there's been many aha moments for me, but when the Voting Rights Act was gutted,
yeah,
I and everybody that I work with, we were online doing everything we could, saying people should be in the streets. You don't understand. This is a massive structural shift.
Yeah.
It is to have a ricochet and repercussions for years and years and years to come. This is we should be crazed right now stopping this. But we weren't. But people will go crazy with some performative language bullshit, just performative bullshit. And I've just been living amongst it for so long and just seeing it replay. There's only so many times you can see the same loop happen before you go, I've seen this before.
Right.
It doesn't lead to resolution.
Well, and the culture war stuff is the red meat that keeps Fox and the Murdochs and everybody else going. Yeah. Without that, they've got nothing, because in terms of the big policies, say what Biden's doing now with childcare subsidies and this kind of thing, people are for that. And so obviously the Republicans can't deal with the substance. So they're always looking for the next culture war distraction. And the left handily provides them again and again and again.
Well, but this is an unfortunate, the upshot is, though, there isn't any place else to go. The only people who seem to be concerned about actually creating policies that improve people's lives are the Democrats. I'm sorry. Yes. I've really looked at it as objectively as I can. And I don't see that there's much of any kind of platform. I mean, the last election, Trump didn't even bother to even have a platform. The GOP didn't even think it was necessary to say what their platform was. Well, and now the only platform is stopping Biden at any cost, no matter what. Even if 68% of the American people are for huge elements of what he's doing, or 63% are for it, they don't care. Let's just shut this down. That's all they've got. So, yeah, I mean, just to keep things in perspective, your quibble, my quibble with some aspects of the left and this performative dance we do is very minor compared to the threat we face from shutting down voting rights, the destruction of the planet, being in the pocket of the oil companies, and so forth and so on, just to keep it in proportion. Absolutely. And if I didn't say that, let me double down. Well, no, you did say that, but I'm saying it too. There's only one side that is. Well, there's only one political party. Yeah, there's really. I mean, America, as political parties go, there's only one. Yeah. And that's the Democrats, because they have a program and an agenda, whereas the Republicans, speaking of performative arts, are nothing but a right-wing performance. There is nothing else. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think, and this brings me to the project that hopefully we're going to be doing together, which is creating a docuseries about the origins of the right wing that you were in the room where it happened, that you were right in the center of. Well, and I made the movies that started a lot of the anti-abortion movement. How should we then live? And then whatever happened to the human race, and all these other things that you've seen. Because the heart of it, though, is I think an ideology that we've actually been dancing around and ignoring for many, many decades. But here we are, people are finally saying the quiet part out loud, which is anti-democracy and it's theocracy. Right. There is a well-moneyed portion of this country that is not really concerned with upholding democracy. As a matter of fact, I think it's a real pain in the ass for them. And there are, I think, are a sort of unholy combination of true believers who truly believe that they truly believe in theocracy. They believe that biblical law is something that the United States should be based on, or was originally based on, this whole dominionism thing. And also just people who want to stay in power. And the one thing that I always kind of just can't quite get through a lot of these people are actually really intelligent, and they have to know that climate change is real. There isn't any way that they don't know.
Well, the ones who are true believers think that Jesus will come back first, so it doesn't matter. And the other folks basically have the billionaire mentality, and that is they'll find a mountaintop or go to outer space or do something to avoid it. But, to go back to one thing you were saying that I think people don't understand fully, and that is when it comes to the right wing that I was part of, even back in the 70s and 80s, we were laying the groundwork for a much longer game than the left has been willing to play on the progressive side. And I'll give you one example. I remember being with my dad at various law schools, Oral Roberts and other places, or some of the secular campuses like Yale, for instance, where we would do seminars with law students. And my dad would say to them, don't go into the mission field, don't become a preacher, don't become an evangelical pastor, go to law school. We've got to take over the system. And out of that came the Federalist Society that put Amy Coney Barrett on the bench most recently and gave Ralph Reed the list to give Donald Trump when Reed made a deal with Trump to make him president by giving him the ground game with churches and crisis pregnancy centers. And that list was ready because my father and I, to some extent, and other evangelicals had been saying, we've been pietistic, we've been talking about Jesus. We've got to not only start voting our conscience, but we need people in law school to become judges like Amy Coney and others. And that long game paid off. They now do control the federal bench, and the left never saw it coming. And I want to interject one other thing here. One reason they didn't is because the media, the big time media like the New York Times, Newsweek, Time Magazine, when they were important, the networks back in the days of that sort of media hegemony, didn't take the right wing seriously. So I remember taking a full page ad out in the New York Times for my dad's book, saying this story ought to have been page 1. And the story was, why isn't the count of bestsellers counting books like my dad's A Christian Manifesto, where he called for the violent overthrow of the US government? And the reason why is because of the snobbery of the elite media saying, well, this is just church stuff. They sell it in church basements, Christian colleges. Who cares about this stuff? And of course, it meant that you had an enormous ignorant liberal population coming along with the idea that somehow this church stuff, quote unquote, it's nothing to do with us. I don't know anybody like this. And then boom, like a jack in the box coming out of the box on a spring, all of a sudden there's Donald Trump, or there's Ralph Reed, or there's Franklin Graham, and there's all these other people. Holy shit, where did they come from? And of course, they're talking about Appalachian poverty or Rust Belt. And really, that's an interesting story, but it's the 60 million evangelical votes that put him in the White House. Yeah. So it's not just the left and answer it. There's a generational process here of a long game that I was part of that they never saw coming. And then the so-called secular media seemed incapable of understanding this movement. And they still are. They still do not get it.
It's not just the secular media. So I just wrote an open letter, which I should send you guys the link to. There's been a lot of chatter about it in my world. With a diverse group of other content creators and people who are interested in persuasion, especially online, and offline and online organizing. And basically, we just said a version of what you just said, which is that we have to have a 30-year plan. Like, what is our 30-year plan? Right now, what we have on our side are a group of well-moneyed people who basically pour money into elections.
Yeah.
Because, if you think about it, you pour money into Biden's campaign, maybe you get to go to Biden's inauguration, maybe Biden answers, or someone associated with Biden answers your emails. It's about proximity to power. It's about influence. But there isn't some sort of like massive ideological goal.
Yeah.
Because the left is really like, we don't have 2 parties, we have like 8 parties.
Yes.
The left is a coalition of like center Democrats, center left Democrats, all the way over to people that think of themselves as Marxists. There's a whole continuum of people who in theory helped band together to defeat Trump, but they're not bound by a shared ideology. In fact, they're direct in opposition on many things. The far left, the farthest of the left, hates the neoliberal, center Democrats.
Sure.
Wants to war with them all the time. As a matter of fact, sometimes come after them much harder and didn't see the true threat of the theocracy and authoritarianism. They didn't take it as seriously as I believe they should have taken it. So what we have is a very strange group of people that don't really have a shared ideology.
Yeah.
The richest of them come in to try to win elections. And that's all they do. There isn't some 30-year, 40 or 50 or long.
Yeah, because I've got a question here that popped up from somebody listening. It's exactly that. And that is question for Laura Dawn. What is the leftist long game? If any, none, you're saying.
Thank you for asking that. That's a really good question.
Hey, while you're thinking about that
I can tell you what my long game is, but
let me interject what the right wing long game is, and that is and I'm not exaggerating this, the white evangelical churches now control the Republican Party. They are their only solid block of voters. Take out Putin, take out the Russians, no problem. Trump's probably still president. Take out the evangelicals, he's not even a joke on late night TV. He doesn't get anywhere. The evangelical whites are the Republican Party with a few conservative Roman Catholics thrown in. The fact of the matter is their long game is that, and I'm not kidding now, that now the state of Israel exists, and so Jesus can come back again. That is to turn America into a Christian nation, which is a genuine theocracy that's more like Iran, for instance's relationship to Islam than it is America to civil liberties. Mm-hmm. This is not a joke. And their thinkers are not even known to the mainstream. People like Rousseff Rushdoony, Chilton, all these other people that I know about.
I need to make this film.
Yeah, so the long game has been bring America back to God, which is dog whistle code for instill theocratic values. You know, this has been dramatized a little bit in Handmaid's Tale and so forth, but never taken quite seriously. And of course, it won't exactly be like that. But you already see this now in the way, for instance, they're trying to criminalize women who seek abortions, the doctors who offer them. Contraceptives are now ruled by the Supreme Court as unnecessary to provide in healthcare providers if you use a religious liberty clause to say you don't believe in it. Chip. They want to roll back gay rights and all the rest of it. So people, that is the long game. The long game, I'm going to just say it again in case anybody misses this. The long game is not to win the next election. The long game is to turn America into a form of theocracy, right, which is not even constitutional. So it isn't like get us back to a more conservative constitutional America. It's beyond that. It's a revolution against democracy and replace it with theocracy. That's the long game. And anybody who doesn't take it seriously has not been awake. Well,
this is why I want to make the film Crazy for God that we've been in pre-production on with you.
Based on my memoir.
Based on your memoir. I don't think that people understand that. And I think that this is something that I've understood for a really long time and that you've understood. I do want to answer the question that came up.
Yeah, I was going to get back to that.
There isn't like a cohesive leftist long game. I can tell you that my long game, and most of the people that I work with, is a sustainable planet, a safe, sustainable planet.
Yeah. Right
now, we don't have that. That's the number one issue on my long game. Right now, we're set for a level of ecological collapse that no one has seen. It's going to happen in my lifetime. It's going to happen in my daughter's lifetime. My daughter will be in her mid-30s, maybe late 30s, when wide swaths of this planet may be uninhabitable. And it's happening even faster than people predicted, just because of the way that these feedback loop happen. You're going to start seeing extreme heat events, superstorms. It's everything that you're seeing now. It's just the beginning. Like I love the we put out a meme. You know, this isn't the hottest day on record. It's the coolest day going forward, right?
Yeah.
It's just going to get hotter, and it's really simple. Why? If you don't understand why. If you don't understand why, you can do this experiment. You can go put your car and turn it on in a garage and shut the doors and see how you fare, right?
Yeah.
You can't pump poison into a closed system without killing yourself, right? You know that, right? You can't park your car in the garage and just let it run. Our atmosphere is a closed system, and we've been pumping poison into it ever since the Industrial Revolution. And everybody knew about it. Everybody at Exxon knew about it. It has been known since for many, many decades.
Yeah.
Exxon was talking about it in the 70s in internal memos. They all know. And the bad news is it's not just the right that has failed you. Everyone has failed you. Every world leader and every corporation is collectively responsible for this. And many of them have known for decades what we were headed towards.
But I want to interject something there, and that is that now it's even worse because the Republican Party, controlled by white evangelicals, has decided that A, Jesus is coming back soon, so all of this is just a good thing because it's a sign of the, quote, end times. Second, that the articulation of this is somehow a liberal hoax to take away their religious liberties in the same way that they framed the Second Amendment is not about sensible gun safety, but it's about taking away your guns. The issue has been politicized by the evangelicals in a way that now is folded into a theological matter, which not only doesn't respond to science, but sees science as a threat. Yeah. So it's worse than not paying attention. It is exactly the same as the anti-vaccine people. And that is that somehow we've now politicized science so that Pfizer and Biden and the government are trying to render you sterile or do something terrible to you by giving you vaccines. They're peddling these myths. And so not only are we not doing anything about the environment, the right wing, fueled by evangelical apocalyptic fascination, has bought into this apocalyptic vision as a good thing. That is like part of their evangelical solution. Yeah, you see God is acting in history. This is all part of the end times. It's worse than nothing. Yeah. And I don't think people understand that. It isn't just we're doing nothing. We have an active group of people in this country in the same way that they want AR-15s and 100-round clips. God damn it, they're going to drive that internal combustion engine almost as a rebellion against the left. It's in your face, anti-environmentalism.
It's too bad because anyway, we don't have shared facts anymore. Another piece of the leftist long game is that, or at least from my perspective, is that this level of income inequality is disastrous, and history has shown it over and over and over again. Right. We are at a level of income inequality not seen since the Gilded Age, when we had no income tax, right? Yeah. So you can't have, when my dad was a union meatpacking worker in the 70s and 80s, he was in a union, and the discrepancy between CEO and worker was, I think, something like 30-1, depending on industry. The discrepancy between CEO and worker now is 300+ to 1. Yes. The same job that was a union protected job that my dad could raise our family of 5 on, now is a low wage job with high turnover, high levels of injury. It's mostly undocumented immigrant wages. That's just bad for everyone. All of that is bad for everyone. But that starts at the top. And it started with Reagan busting his union. Okay. Yes. So there are reasons these things happen. So part of my leftist long game is I would like an economy that is fairer for everyone. People on the right likes to say redistribution of wealth. I mean, I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. I don't think that Jeff Bezos has done anything in his life to enjoy that much power.
You don't think that his rocket ship will solve our problems?
No, I don't.
Somehow?
But I also don't think that, I don't understand why anybody would think it would be okay for one person to have that much money, therefore that much power. Yeah,
it's ridiculous how we got there. And the big dividing line.
Portion of my taxes than Jeff Bezos does.
Yeah, I mean, and Reagan is where the divide came. I want to get into one thing here with the project that you're wanting to make with me. That's a documentary series, and
that I am making.
And that you are making with me, that is happening. And, my experience of working with you, you've directed me in a couple of things. We've shot a bunch of interviews and so forth and so on. I find that, the stuff you make is really terrifically good. So I'm very heartened by the fact you're doing that. I'm also pleased that you gave me a nice blurb for my new book that's coming out in November, which we're not talking about now because it's not in bookstores, but people can find, fall in love, have children, stay put, save the planet. But you'll notice that Save the Planet comes before Be Happy on the title. And that is because my views of what's happening are very scarily lockstep with yours, which is one reason I'm trusting you to make a project about the arc of my family's life and the harm we did to this country. coming out of that little ministry my parents started very innocently, and it was a very beautiful place. And how did we go from that to being the people who helped put Trump in the White House 40 years later? I think that's an interesting, that's a story that needs to be told. And I trust you to tell it. I think, no one would be able to do it better. But in contact with me and my family, how has that continued to shape your view since you've been studying my dad's work and everything we did? What sort of a piece has that filled in for you in terms of just your own view of how everything unfolded? What have you learned that you didn't know before? Not about me personally, but just the arc of history.
Well, it confirmed a lot of things for me. But I think the thing that was slightly unexpected was I really, and this shouldn't surprise me because it's always the truth once you look under the hood of any person, is how complex and human and messy and relatable all of it was. And how much I appreciated the dialectic that I started having just by engaging with your father through his, the films that you made and books. And there was just so much to, and I don't use this word lightly, there was so much to love there. And that's why I so passionately wanted to tell this story, because it felt like I just keep searching for places where we can all be invited in to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Just to wrap around and tie this all together, one other piece of the leftist agenda is a belief in democracy and a belief in the aggregate power of people. That this amazing, crazy experiment in the United States is worth having. And what that means is we have to live in a society with a whole bunch of people that may think differently than us, that may care about the same things.
Yeah.
They care about their family, their children, they may care about the environment. But we have a 330 million people here who may disagree about how to get there. And that ongoing conversation, which is messy and hard and complex, is something that we all engage in together. And hopefully by engaging in it together, we can solve huge problems together. And it's happened many, many times. There are really great things also about this country. There's plenty of pain. There's plenty of awfulness, the foundation of the country, and, years of, there's plenty there to, that we have to live with and reckon with, but there have been moments of greatness as well. All you have to do is live in New York City, and experience the incredible, beautiful melting pot that is New York City, and to be filled with hope that a multicultural society can live. You can live right next door to, the Hasidic Jewish community, to this and that. And sometimes there's problems and sometimes there's tensions, but yet the city just keeps going. The vibrance and beauty of that city keeps going, and the resilience of that city keeps going. So, that is something that I found, and that's what I'm looking for. And that's after 18 years of doing this, I was looking for trying to engage in a deeper level on that kind of story. And I found it in your family, because your family is full of love and complexity and intelligence and talent, and clearly had a huge effect that people sometimes outside of the evangelical world don't really understand. Yeah. But there's also been a reckoning with a fundamentalist belief system that was at odds, I think, with the education and intelligence of certain you. I actually believe of other members of your family too. And so your journey of questioning that and trying to figure out who you were as you walked away from that, I think is incredibly, it's heroic and relatable. And I just want to tell it with the complexity and compassion that it deserves. Yeah, one of the things I really love. It invites everyone in to talk. I hope that a far left person wants to hear this story, and I hope that an evangelical Christian wants to hear this story. Yeah. Maybe there's a space there where they can talk, and if I could help create that, I would feel well served. Well,
I love your approach to that, because the thing is, when I wrote Crazy for God, and as I've been thinking all through these things again for this new book of mine, Fall in Love, Have Children, Stay Put, Save the Planet, Be Happy, I tell the story again in the introduction there to try to bring people up to speed of where I'm coming from. What strikes me is the Shakespearean tragedy of my family, in the sense that if somebody had come in 1968, 69, 70 to L'Abri Fellowship, my parents' commune in Switzerland, they would have thought they were in an open, loving, homogenous, lovely place, black and white people mixing, men and women, gay people treated with respect.
I want to go back to L'Abri right now. It sounds
I know.
amazing.
And, they read my mom's books, What is a Family, or my father's works of philosophy, like The God Who Is There. There's no politics in it. It's from a conservative Christian point of view, but it's not exclusionary. And the arc from there to the storming of the Capitol, where, of course, we weren't involved, and I've been out of the movement for 40 years and on the other side of the issue. But nevertheless, the sad thing is it really only was embodied in the last 8-9 years of my father's life, where he took this turn to the right because of the abortion issue and because he was driven there also by me and my ambitions as a young nepotistic sidekick looking for a way to earn a living and have influence. And plus, I was a true believer for many reasons that, you'll be going into. But the real part of this is not, hey, the Schaeffer family were evil, and always were. This is a family that started out not only with good intentions, but with an open home ministry that took people in a loving way. And how did we get from there to here? So I think you're on to something there. And in a weird way, having you just read all my parents' books and watched the movies I hadn't seen for 40 years that I directed and wrote the screenplays for and so forth. I mean, in a way, you know more about this than anybody I know right now because you're doing all this research.
Well, my impression, my impression is that you can tell me if I'm wrong. I guess we're getting off on a little side tangent here, and I do want to answer the question that just came up. But I think your mother, Edith, seemed like a true believer. Like she just really was a true believer. But I felt like your father, I felt like he wrestled with his faith.
Yeah, very much so.
Because his articulation of it showed that he had thought through every reason not to believe.
Yeah.
Articulate what anybody, and it just felt like something that he had argued within himself. And I found that incredibly relatable. I call myself, I think your book, you call yourself an atheist that
an atheist who believes in God. Yeah.
Well, I call myself a secular Christian. Yeah. Because I was raised a Christian. I went to Bible school and I've been baptized, and my entire family and culture was Christianity. And so it just there's no way for me.
Hey, we could start a good mega church together and make all the money to budget the movie and, move on. I mean, that's where there are God hills is where the real.
I'm totally down to start a secular Christian church.
I
actually wish I could go to church. I actually really miss going to church. I miss the community. But the problem is that this is going to sound flip, and I don't mean it flip. I don't believe that Jesus is magic. I just don't need. I've read and studied too much. I almost finished a minor in religion in college. I don't need a virgin birth to find meaning in the New Testament. I'm here for the Jesus that overturned the moneylender tables. I'm here for the socialist revolutionary Jesus, and his message. Just the simplicity and the power of turn the other cheek, and so many other things that I find so deeply ingrained in my own belief system. But that is at odds with a fundamentalist reading of the text, and that is at odds with where Christianity is really gone. And so I don't find myself a place in that community anymore. So I call myself a secular Christian. But I want to answer this. Someone said, I need a silver lining. The artwork behind you reads, the beginning is near. I hope so. What do you believe is the single most important thing a person can do today to make that first move in your ideal long game? I will say to you that I think the good news is, and I know we're all looking for some good news, is that I believe that we have everything that, from what I've seen, and I've studied and read a lot, and I've worked with a lot of climate scientists, we have everything we need, all the tools we need to innovate our way out of this. Mm-hmm. But we have to change the way that we live. There isn't any surviving this without changing the way that we live.
Right.
Which, by the way, I want to put in a plug for Frank's book, because he actually talks about this, the same exact thing. And there, I should just like put together a reading list. And one thing I just read that really was meaningful to me, which I lent to you, Frank, and I hope you read it, is Tribe by Sebastian Junger.
It's sitting right here. And the only reason I haven't read it, it's right here.
I don't know Sebastian Junger, but I'm
lying to you. The reason it's right here is because I've been reading books for all these people I'm interviewing, and I haven't got him booked. So
interview him.
Let's book him so that Ernie, my producer, will say, "Have you read the book yet?" And then I will have.
Figure out how to get in touch with Sebastian Junger for you, because
do it. Let's book him.
It's an important book, but basically, I believe that there is a future where we could live sustainably with the planet and also live more peacefully with each other, which is evolving to smaller communities that are that are sustainable and that are supportive.
Which is, by the way, a whole chapter in my new book.
Raising our children in a more supportive manner. But this is this not only has to happen on a federal level, but it has to happen within us, and it has to happen on a local level. And I really can see a vision, and this is again a failure of the left to have articulated a vision of what could be as a society. And I hope to help change that. But I can see a future. We're not going to be able to at any time soon get the carbon out of the atmosphere that we've already put there, right?
Yeah.
So there are levels of warming that are just baked into what's already happened, but we could stop the worst from happening, and we could evolve into a more caring and cooperative society. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that I think anybody can do today is to just educate yourself on that. And I wish I had an easy place to send you. I mean, where that society was being formed, because if I knew that of that place, I would be there too. And I'll keep my eyes open for that. But right now, I just work with different climate organizations that I know are doing a lot of bold work. The Climate Mobilization, I think, is a great organization that is really trying to tell the truth. Extinction Rebellion, they're a little more colorful and maybe not for everyone, but I love them, and I think they're doing really great work. The Climate Emergency Fund is a great place to go. I'd be whoever you are, just DM me on Facebook, and I'm happy to point you in a lot of directions. But I think the first thing is really we have to start talking to each other. We have to tell the truth about what's happening. We have to act like the truth is real. If we could just do those two things, that would be huge. Tell the truth. We're in existential peril. Yeah. 2, you got to act like that's real. And in doing so, there's this amazing opportunity to re-envision how we live. If there's anything that the pandemic could teach us, it's that there are other ways to live. And that being in a supportive community, and this isolation that we've baked into our lives in Western industrialized countries, it's just not good for us. It's not good for our minds. It's not good for our bodies. And we have to envision a more sustainable way to live. And I believe we can. Well, we'll wrap it up here. To go back to what you're talking about in terms of the arc of my family took, the irony is that the brief fellowship was in this little Swiss chalet with a wood burning stove. My father did not own a car. He worked on the side of his bed, didn't even have an office. We grew most of our own vegetables. The basement had a dirt floor, and we made sauerkraut, kept stuff all year long. I mean, insanely, when I look back on my missionary childhood, we were living a sustainable communal life in a small farming village that had been established in the 11th century, on the side of a mountain where you cut just the right amount of wood every year to heat your stove, but never clear cut the forest, where the cows, the manure went on the field, the hay got cut. I grew up in a sustainable community in a little Christian mission that then wound up doing what it did. And that story in itself is so illustrative, of how that happened. So the crazy thing is, not only does the new technology offer hope, there have been sustainable communities all over the globe for millennia. And
what did we do? And I think that's obviously the whole subject that the people you're pointing people towards are looking at. But yeah, I have hope too. I don't think that it's time to give up, but I think that, like you were saying, we need to tell the truth and be realistic. And I cannot thank you enough for the time we've had. Let me give you the last word here, and then we will close this out. So we've been talking to Laura Dawn, filmmaker, writer, director, musician, and share an action list with us. Write something down and send it to my producer, Ernie, so we can post it.
I would be honored to. I'll be very happy to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love talking to you. I just, I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I need the world to be better for her. And the one thing I know that since 2016, where I've really tried to invest in having bigger ears and listening to people with a more conservative mindset than myself, is that we all love our children.
Yes.
And we all want the best for them. And we all want, well, I don't know what we all want. I think we all want peace and safety.
Yeah.
And I think so. I know we all want safety, the peace part. I fear some people think that there's a necessary violent conflict that they have to get through to get to the peace. And I don't think that that's true. I think we all.
But I think you're right. And I think that concentrating on the family unit, the community unit, the sharing, whether somebody's pair bonded or single or not, is not the point. But the fact of the matter is, that's where the emphasis has to be. And if there's any hope of reaching right and left agreement on anything, it will be in policy that affects our children. If we can't motivate people on that basis, then I have no idea where we could go. But I think you're right on that. I think that's one place we can reach out and talk to each other.
The other thing I'll say before I go is that try to train yourself to try to refine your own bullshit meter. When you see something in the press that's just been designed to divide us, ignore it. That sounds like overly simple, but the truth is that the whole game is clicks, right? It's manufactured outrage to make money off of you.
Yes.
And they're making money off of you, and they're tracking everything that you do online. So the minute that you buy in and start clicking and reading all that and getting all riled up about, whatever it is that someone's trying to rile you up about.
Yes.
Think about this. Is it really affecting your day-to-day life? Are trans athletes really affecting your day-to-day life? Is that really as important as the climate catastrophe that is threatening our children's future? Is that really as important? You're going to probably make a list of 10 things that are really just train yourself to recognize the outrage machine that is designed to divide us and is designed to make money off of marketing to you, and shut it down, shut it out of your life, and take that time and spend it building a better, reaching across to whoever you need to reach across to, and building a safer and more sustainable future for all of us.
Thank you, Laura. You are a wise woman. I always learn a lot from you. Thank you so much. And we will wrap it up there. If you've enjoyed listening to this, please share it. Please like the page. And please listen to this as a podcast and tell people about it. Thank you so much, Laura. We'll talk again very soon. Thank you. Bye.